States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. Can you all hear me? I still can't hear any of you. Can you hear me?
Human resources action. I'm going to take these one at a time, and if you have any comments or input.
All right, no input to add to the HR action. As you can see, we always have action with our human resources, hiring and movement. So you can see there, then we've got several changes with our coaching staff. So if you have any questions on that, I can try to answer.
Good. Anybody else? I see we have one teacher resigned. And so we've filled
Yes.
that spot with a long-term sub.
Yes, we have. Yep. Good highlight.
Yeah. All right. And the next up is payroll. Oh, no, next up is some contracts for our Director of Financial Services, Nutrition Services, Facilities Maintenance, and Director of Technology. So these are contracts that were not part of the earlier groups that we talked about. So this is the last group, I think,
Yep.
right?
Yes, these are the classified directors. This is the last group.
Any questions by anybody there? Next up is payroll goods and services.
I'd like to highlight tonight the expenditure for McKinstry. That amount of $129,493 is part of a larger project that I believe we've talked about with you we've presented information on this earlier with our indoor air quality work that we are engaged with, and actually getting close to having it be completed. We have a report that'll come back next meeting with Frank and I will provide the board an overview of what that project entailed. The full project is estimated to cost $364,000. It's very in-depth at all buildings, and it's a health and safety project and totally funded by the federal ESSER dollars that the district received. So we're excited to tell you more about that next meeting.
Good. Any questions by anybody on payroll goods and services? All right, the next item in the consent agenda area is a policy update. It's not a new policy. It's an update regarding a waiver of high school graduation credits. It's actually some fairly minor update, however, an important and critical update. Maybe you can pull us in there.
Each year, we're responsible to communicate with the State Board of Education and make sure that our school district is in compliance with all kinds of things. And this year, as part of that compliance, when we went through the process, and when I speak of we, Alicia and her team went through the process to fill out the State Board of Education compliance regulations, when we submitted, there was one that we had not seen before, and that it was an area where we were either required to check yes or no. Unfortunately, we couldn't check yes because our policies did not line up with what was being asked. And so it came back to us as we had to check no. And so in turn, then they came back and said, here's what you need to do to make sure that your policy meets what State Board of Education expects all public schools to have in place. Basically, it is to award credit by subject area for students currently or formerly in institutionalized educational settings who pass all or part of the GED assessment. What that allows us to do is if we receive students who enroll with us that used to be in an institutionalized educational setting, and they've taken the GED and passed all of it or part of it, we can award credit to them so that they can get their high school diploma. We did not have that within our policy. So that has been added, which now gives us the authority to be able to provide credit for them.
Good. So an example might be someone that's in juvenile center. Now they're with us and they studied or received some academic curriculum there, and now we can grab that and add that to their work and use this policy then to award them.
That fits into the waiver of high school graduation credits, which, as we know, through COVID was very important in assisting the graduates to meet graduation requirements. It didn't come into use a lot, but for individual cases, students greatly impacted by COVID, it was nice to have that. So this continues to be an area, and it was nice to see that the State Board of Education was looking at district policies to ensure that we were set up to take advantage if we had students who were in this situation.
Right. And I might, just an observation on my part, but the whole idea of waivers is not to shortcut any of the requirements. It's to leverage and utilize students that have maybe multiple channels of learning and to capture their knowledge and learning and experience in various places so that we can grant credit. And so we're not shortcutting or circumventing the system or the requirement whatsoever.
Correct.
All right. Any other comments on that one? All right, then there's two travel requests. One's a DECA, all leadership. I think they're going to Bellevue in November. 8 students, if I read it right. And that's a leadership with Mr. Casey. Did I say that right? Benjamin Casey. I'm sorry. If he's listening,
Other way around.
I apologize.
Other way around, Mr. Benjamin.
Okay, Mr. Benjamin. And then the other is honors band to Seattle in November with a dozen or so students for our honor band. And I looked at the agenda on that. My gosh, it looks like a robust agenda. So we're happy to have them go to that event. Yeah. All right. Next up is a couple of donations. Shoot, one from GVC Plumbing and the Spielman family, Chris and Valerie, if I understand that's their first names, and $500 to go to the Mecha Club. So what a great contribution from them. So we want to publicly thank them for that to be used for college visits and other things. And then the second one is from Classic Photography, who we do business with as a district. And they took care of a custom t-shirt order for dual language, $1,300, $1,375. Wow. So thank you very much to Classic Photography. And that's it for the consent agenda. Would open it up for any other questions or anything from anybody? Otherwise, we need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
Great, thank you, Dan. All those in favor, please indicate with an eye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Good to have you back on with us, Joe. All right, we're going to move into an annual report here from our very well-known and admired administrator and Selah Viking, Joe Koskarart, who is our Director of Transportation and Safety. We're happy to have him in that position, and we're delighted to have him here tonight to give us a little rundown on transportation and safety. Joe, welcome.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much. So tonight, in my dual roles as Safety and Transportation Director, we're going to start with safety. Next slide, please. Wanted to highlight for the board that we have added a web page within our district main menu that you can take a look at for our community to better understand some of the safety concepts that we practice here in the Selah School District. So these are just a couple of snapshots of that web page, different things that people can click on for resources. There's a video that stars Joel Starr that was made through the SSOC with ESD 105 and Chris Whedon. Talks a little bit about our visitor management system, which I'll get into in a little more detail. And we need to give a little credit where credit is due. I was shown the West Valley High School website from Clayton Wyckoff, who's an old colleague of mine, and very well done. So we certainly borrow a lot in education, and was happy to borrow from my old days there in relationship with Clayton so that our community would have a better understanding of what safety looks like for their children in the Selah School District. So when you get a chance, check that out. Let me know if you have any questions or suggestions for how we might improve that. Next slide, please. Last week was America's Safe Schools Week. And with that, we included on that website a post for our patrons. Again, working with the ESD 105 school safety folks. It is the Selah School District crisis responses. We have the core 4 crises that we train for, that we work with our safety leads in the school and with other personnel, and also a campaign or initiative known as See Something, Say Something, to empower everyone, every student, every employee, every parent, to say something when something looks amiss, when something doesn't seem right in a school. Better to do something than do nothing, especially in this day and age. So that information is a couple of pages about each drill, very specifically how we do it. There a couple of years ago was a lot of information in the news about drills gone wrong, right? Where they scare kids and scare kids and employees, and we don't do that. Okay, we prepare in a little different way. So it outlines our 4 main drill responses, as well as kind of the 5th, an earthquake drill, which a lot of our schools are doing this month during Earthquake Preparedness Month, and an info letter, as well as an infographic, so that they can take a look at the See Something, Say Something, a ton of resources there, phone numbers, websites for all kinds of different things that they might want to call someone to point out, not just in our district, but in the community, to help keep Selah safe. So we set that, put that on the website. We are using our Parent Square crisis and drill group notification system. Took a lot of tweaking. We're going to do some more tweaking in the next day or 2, but it's a private group, so it doesn't go out to the whole district. Administrators, directors, selected support staff, Selah Fire Department, Selah Police, ESD 105, SSOC personnel, that when we do drills, they get notified of. If we ever have a real crisis, hoping not to, but they will get that. And we're hoping to also add county sheriff at some point as well. So we've got a group of people that are now using that. We've implemented that. It took the place of a system that went defunct through the SSOC, and so that's being done internally. Great credit to Greg Sugden and the tech department for their assistance with that. Wanted to let you know too that we recently, in the last couple of weeks, updated our Motorola radios and made enhancements to those. Great thanks to Frank Reno and Chris Harris in maintenance and facilities. We now have unified channels. So we know that if you're on channel 8, that you are in a district talk around. That if you're on channel 1, you're with transportation. When I was on this campus, you might have had channel 3, you might have had channel 4, you might have had a dot. You really didn't know. And so we're updating that, and we surely have seen the results of that in just a week of being able to communicate between building and transportation director, which wasn't happening before, and vice versa, as well as other communications within the district that can happen now that weren't happening before because of antiquated radios and radios that weren't all set to the same frequency. So anyway, we're pretty excited about that and the enhancement to safety for our community because of that. Next slide, please. All right. We, with the School Safety Operations and Coordination Center that I've talked about before, ESD 105, have been giving basic school safety presentations to groups that either didn't get them before in our district and so weren't a part of the training that happens every August and September for our certificated staff, and in some cases our day staff, but not our evening staff when you think of custodians. So I was able to present to the administrative assistants in August, emergency guest teacher training in October, as well as transportation and facilities staff. A real powerful one was with our custodians, some of whom you could just tell they weren't empowered. They weren't empowered to see something, say something, some of them. And to understand the lingo that we use, the procedures and the protocols that we use, and that they're a part of that, even if they are working at 11 p.m. at night, was neat to see. The questions they asked were fantastic. And my leads at each school have come back and said, hey, thanks for sicking the custodial staff on us. They've come back and said, demanded that we have these documents. I said, great, that's what they were supposed to do. So I'm pretty excited about that. Our last one is coming up here in 2 weeks. with nutrition services and our IT department. I included a PDF of the presentation for you guys to see. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. We do have advanced trainings as well that we're going to do later in the year with transportation. How do we prepare if there are crises, the real thing, and what does transportation do? How do we respond? All right, the next one is Safe Visitor Solutions. Go back one, thank you. Safe Visitor Solutions, protocols, procedures, and frequently asked question guidelines. So we found out that we had different protocols when people went to schools. That some of our staff members with their badges were still being asked for their driver's licenses. Some places were just absolutely meticulous about the driver's license, and they were asking every time, not just the first time. Other places would only ask the first time. So we found out we need to make sure we're all doing things the same way. That way it's not confusing to our patrons, and for safety, we're doing things the same way. So we drew up a document. That's a 2-page document. It's been discussed with administrative assistants from that meeting, some tweaks, even discussion today about some things for some of our employees that maybe aren't used to going in the front door and how they can do their jobs while going in a side door, back door, but still communicate that they're in the building. This was shared with all the safety leads as well as the Selah School District Crisis Team just a couple of days ago, which again includes not only our own employees, but also some folks from the ESD, the fire department, and the police department. Next slide. All right, transportation highlights. This one's kind of a hybrid of both safety and transportation. Work has begun on Selah School District Safe Walk Routes Committee. It's been a while. We've built some new buildings. There's a lot of new sidewalks, traffic signals, school beacons, all kinds of different things since the last time this was done thoroughly in 2013. It's been a while, so it's time. So we had our first meeting last month. It included folks from the city of Selah. It had parents. It had a student. Natalie was there. Thank you so much, Natalie, for joining us. District employees, we did not have anyone from WDOT, but our representatives from the city of Selah are working on that for us because of the highway that runs through our city, Jim Clement's Way there. And then our Selah School District Transportation Consultant is working with us along the way. We're already planning our November meeting and getting some PR ready to go out. We had a meeting just today to discuss some PR to get more input from the community and what that will look like. Our new transportation facility work is underway. The last 2 days, we've been dodging backhoes and bulldozers, and it's been entertaining with our conference schedule, but we're making it work, taking my mantra of flexible, adaptable from my days with the alternative program into transportation, and using those great radios with the communication to let people know when we're parking somewhere else and doing things differently. They started the sewer line work, the backlot barn demo, and other demo work, and I'll turn it over for a few seconds to Chris to mention some more.
I just wanted to let the board know that we have broken ground on that project. We are so excited. We had our first construction meeting this week earlier, and we have a great group of people we're working with obviously Shervinell and our ESD 112 CSG group as our construction management, and everyone is working really well together so far, and just things are going really well. So we're really excited about this project.
Thank you. Yes, we are too at transportation. So it's worth the piles of dirt and, you know, some delays at times. So it's going to be very exciting. We have begun conversations and are moving right along with our winter weather preparations, protocols, and message readiness. You'll see things going out next week from our district. Some of you know they closed some of the passes already in the last 24 hours and the earliest since the 1930s. So it's coming. We're getting ready. Yay. Next slide, please. All right, so we went to a 3-tier transportation busing system. We began with middle school and high school kids in the morning and in the afternoon. And then once they're dropped, JCP and SIS kids. We follow that with Robert Lentz Kinder and pre-K students. Wanted to let you know that it was a challenge in the month of September and October with the many construction projects to stay on time. But again, great communication and networking with the Department of Transportation and Selah Public Works. Rocky Wallace and his team are fantastic and love working with him. And once I learned how to use Parent Square, look out. The great news is when I put something out about buses being a little delayed, we've gotten a lot of likes, getting addicted to those little hearts that we're getting. And it's decreased the number of calls in our office, which is helpful when the radios are going. It's a lot to listen to. So pretty happy about that. And now we're into a groove with most of the construction for now stopped. JCP SIS, the 7-minute delay that we've instituted for the dismissal of walkers and parent pickups is working really well there at SIS. It's working well for the big buses at JCP and most of the time pretty good for the littles. They're in a different parking lot and sometimes they get jammed up with the parents there. But great staff cooperation and coordination at both sites. I tell you what, wonderful people and just the go get them spirit there. Let's help out and let's keep kids safe. I'm really proud of this district and those folks. At the kindergarten, pre-K, same thing, fantastic staff helping. 2 to 3 of our buses arrive before or at 4 o'clock on a 3:55 dismissal. The remaining 7 to 8 buses are about 4:15 by 4:15 most days, sometimes 4:17 the last bus, but the staff uses the cafegimatorium, just had to throw that word in there, as a holding area, and they do a great job getting the kids out and working together. Ridership is up by 100+ this year so far, so I wanted to let you know that as well. Next slide. So questions at this time and my contact information.
Joe, I had a quick question about visitors checking in at schools and so forth. What effect does that have on parent volunteers in the classroom?
Great question. We do have a volunteer system in place, so they fill out the volunteer forms. With that as a background check, and if they are cleared to do so and have been cleared by the building that they desire that person to volunteer, then when they check in, they do so with the driver's license. The first time is scanned. After that, it's producing it just to compare it. If they've had any changes, we'll rescan it. But if it's the same one, then we don't have to rescan that driver's license. They get a badge, has their picture on it, has other vital information on it, and where they're going to be going to.
That badge is like a sticker that they wear around.
That's correct.
And there aren't any more restrictions in terms of COVID protocol. Is that correct for visitors on campus?
I don't believe, none that I know. Good question.
I'm living proof of that system. It worked on the very first day of school this year. I was at the high school. And so I went into the front office, which was very busy, as you might imagine. And I said, I'm here. And, I didn't have this badge yet. And so I gave the office my driver's license and she scanned it into the machine and out popped a label and says, here you go, and where are you going? And I said, Mrs. McCartney, and I wore it and it worked great. And it was smooth and they knew exactly what to do. And so I felt like the process was smooth, but B, it was a real good safety procedure. There wasn't any getting around, and even though it was the first day of school, it was through the office, and so it worked well.
Good. That's what we'd like to hear. Other questions?
Not a question, Joe, just kudos to you guys in the transportation department with construction we've had going on. I know as far as a single person in a vehicle, so I can imagine with the buses and having to reroute and stay patient and all that kind of stuff. It's probably been a lot of work and a lot of patience on the driver's part, and it seems like they've been doing a good job. So
Thank you. I'll pass that on to them for sure. Other questions? Thank you so much.
Well, Joe, let me just finish by saying then that, you're 4 months into this new role. And from what I'm seeing and what you brought to us here tonight, wasting time getting going. And I see in tons of significant upgrades and enhancements to both transportation and the safety side of things. So we're so delighted to have you in the role that you're in, and thank you for the great work that you've already done in just a short amount of time.
Thank you. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say thanks for the great support from district office. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Well, Joe, I just wanted to chime in at the end too, to just say thank you. Your leadership is just outstanding. And I love the visibility that Joe has demonstrated throughout the district. He's out at the bus pickups and drops on a lot of different days when he can. And he's just done a tremendous job on that side of things, leading the transportation department, really diving in and establishing relationships, but also with the safety stuff. I mean, he's definitely met our expectations and exceeded in a lot of areas, especially with the safety stuff. As far as that goes, I mean, really, really excited about that. So thank you so much. You're doing a great job.
Joe, are you still the voice for any of the sport teams? Okay, okay. Well, I missed you from basketball days. Let me add though, Eric does do a good job. I didn't mean to undercut him, but Joe was the one for my kids' team, so.
Oh, thank you to Joe and the good information there. Always enjoy when he's here. So next, we are going to move to the student board representatives. And before I turn it over to Natalie, I read with with a great deal of interest, the Selah Journal. And I don't know if you've seen it or not, but the four of you were featured in the local paper, and I thought great pictures of the four of you, and it was really nice to see that in the local. It looks like you're official now. I mean, yeah. I'd like to hear from you and how things are going and anything that you'd like to share with us. Natalie?
Okay, so we all made the decision between the four of us that we're each going to focus on one of the four other schools aside from the high school. And so I've chosen to focus on the middle school this year, and I'll be scheduling a visit there with Mr. Peters pretty soon over the next month or so. So I'm very excited about that. And then I'm also interested in doing some sort of project related to the Highly Capable program this year. Indy and I attended the Highly Capable Forum this month, and it was very interesting, really good attendance from community members, and interesting to hear what their thoughts and potential concerns were about the program. And then this month, I also attended the transportation, the safe walking routes meeting that Mr. Kloschgart was just talking about, and also very interesting. And I'm looking forward to seeing that project through and being involved with that. So that's what I've been up to over the last month or so.
Not to mention all the groups and the leadership and the things that you're doing at the high school as a student.
Yeah, yeah, yep. Keeps me busy, but I enjoy it.
Well, that's great, Natalie. I also understand that Selah now will have a student newspaper that you are the editor of. Fill us in
Yes.
on that.
Yeah, so the high school this year has started up a student publication. It's online. You can access it through the school district website. It's called the Viking Voice. We do kind of some news. There's lots of columns and kind of opinion pieces. Lots of interesting stuff that my peers write. I don't necessarily write for it a lot, but I do edit it, and put all the stuff on the website. So I've really enjoyed that this year.
When's the first edition coming out, or is it out?
It is out, yeah. We generally put a couple new articles out every week. So it's pretty evolving and lots of new material to read.
And where do we find the link?
If you go to the school district website, I believe it's under, actually not 100% sure, but it's somewhere up on the top. If you click, there's like a drop down menu and like voice.
Sure to do that in the morning. Yeah.
Thank you. That's good to hear.
It's definitely nice to see. Mr. Benjamin again is
Mhm.
involved with that with our students, and yeah, it was good to see. come back in a digital way, which I think is probably a better way to do it. That's
Yeah, because people can access it from the phone. So thank you. That's very good to hear. Glad you like it.
Great, thank you. Great to have you here
Thank you.
for your report. Good, we will move on, and there might be, you said the other reps have sports and other practice or obligations, so, maybe they'll. Good, thank you. And so now we'll move on to our Associate Superintendent for Operations, Chris and Stephanie.
All right. To jump in on the Safe Walk Route Committee, just a further clarification. I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with the fact that we're currently not funded for stops within 1 mile radius in the school district. So part of this process is to determine which streets and different walking areas are not safe for students to walk. And then what we do, we go to the state and we petition to try to get funding for those areas that are within the 1 mile radius that aren't safe for students to walk. So there's a whole process that we go through to take a look at this. I'm excited to jump back into this after a few years and get that all nailed down. The maps that we have are outdated and everything else. So we're ready to take a look at that. And I appreciate the city's involvement as well. And the other people at the table, including Natalie. Love having a student voice on that committee. So more to come on that. So I just want to clarify that point. Secondly, just a highlight tonight for me is to recognize our nutrition team. Lori did a great job this morning, the director, to send out a note to her full team, noting that we're serving more breakfast and meals across the district now that we're a CEP school where all students eat for free, and her team has just stepped up and handled the additional, I think the numbers were 200 from September to October, 200 or 140 more lunch meals across the district and 200 more breakfasts just in 1 month. And I expect it to continue to rise. It's just great to see our team, our nutrition team, step up and just really take pride in what they do every day to serve high quality meals. I don't know if you saw the Facebook post recently from Heidi on the scratch cooking that they do. They have scratch meals every day.
Wow.
They can't serve everything scratch. We wouldn't be able to afford the labor to do that. But it's interesting when I talked to Lori this week at our normal meeting that she did a little survey with other districts around us, and I won't name any districts, but we by far stand head and shoulders above other districts when it comes to scratch cooking and just the service that we provide our students. And it makes me smile. Awesome. And it's great to see that kudos go back to her team because they work hard every day to make that happen. So it's kind of a nice thing today.
Well, I'll back that up. I have 3 grandkids in the district and I asked them about lunch and they go, the lunches are delicious.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Good to hear.
From the little kid point of view, they love the lunch.
Excellent. All right. Stephanie's going to talk about the enrollment update and then we'll get into our levy discussion.
All right, so sharing some more good news about enrollment. Since last month in September, we've increased our enrollment by 35 FTE. So now we're up to 3,666 kids for our October count. So that brings our average up to 3,649, which is about 89 over what we projected for this year, which is great news. And then if you look at compared to last June, in June 2022, that's 63 above that count and 138 above 2021 in June. So things are going back up and looks like it's staying there and continuing to go up. We're still closed for a majority of our grades except for kinder and high school and BPL. But yeah, we're doing good.
Looks like we're still shy at the kindergarten level.
Yes, we're a little low on to projection at kinder. We're 28 under projection. Well, 7 of that is TK, transitional kindergarten. We're about 21 under projection at the kinder level. We'll continue to see a few new ones throughout the year, but we'll note that on future projections for sure.
We think that's students that are out there that are, parents are still holding them back or homeschool, or are they just I think you mentioned it to me yesterday, Kevin, a low birth rate class or?
It is.
Sure.
That's the one that I get the most nervous about after projecting enrollment, just to see the whites of the eyes, to see, okay, are we close or not? It's nice that we have a solid preschool program that a lot of the kids through preschool funnel into our system. So that's good.
It is important to note that that is the smallest grade level that we have with number of students in the entire district. So it is, if that grade level stays within that number, there are impacts to having that number of students as they navigate through the different buildings for staffing purposes and other resources and so forth.
That small little group will move through the system unless it grows across. But yeah, that comes through in our cohort projections for enrollment for future years. All right, let's dive into levy discussion. Any questions on what we've talked about so far? If not, we can go into the levy. Just kind of to highlight what our agenda or calendar looks like with levy tonight. Obviously, we're bringing information to you as a tool to collaborate with the board, get ideas and thoughts about our upcoming levy. As a reminder, our current levy expires in December 2023. So we are in a position that we need to run a levy in 2023. So tonight's meeting the objective is to have conversation with the school board, get your ideas, and then we go back to the table, fine tune what we're thinking, and bring back a recommendation from the district cabinet on the November 10th board meeting date to present to you, and then get a informal nod or thumbs up from the board on the direction that we are recommending, or tweak it based on what your thoughts are. And then we'll come back to the board in December on the 8th to ask for adoption of the levy resolution. There's a new, also in the voter requirements now, there's a new requirement that we haven't had to look into before, and that's looking for and against members of the community. If there's anyone that wants to help write for or against statements for the levy voter pamphlet, because they publish those statements. So as a requirement for the school district will be to put out an announcement on our website for a week or so to ask for any volunteers that want to be part of those two groups. And then we will bring that list to you for approval at the December 8th meeting as well. So that's really the agenda for us behind the scenes. A lot of work's going into projecting and looking at different options for a levy proposal. Using as a guide, we're using the 4 options that we'll go through tonight to look at what all of our levy requests and things that are currently funded by the levy. We're updating costs and looking at how that matches up to each option that we're going to talk about tonight. And we'll be able to bring that information as part of our recommendation on November 10th. So there's a lot of calculating behind the scenes, but also conversations. And the conversations are what is fun for me. Today even took meeting with the athletic director about some of the needs in the athletic program, and just hearing from building principals and directors on needs and thoughts that they have around providing different options, one being band. We're looking at, we haven't provided any instrument replacement money for band or instrument repair money, or even travel and registration costs tied to the general fund, the grades. Those are things that we're looking at. We want to make sure that we provide equal opportunities for all kids. And that's one thing that maybe students and families can't afford fees to rent instruments. And we're looking at all of that now and making sure that we do our due diligence there to provide what's best for kids. So we're excited about those conversations as well.
So if I could just reiterate for everybody else, Chris and Kevin asked Jamie and I to come in a week or so ago and do a little preview of what we're about to talk about. And everybody, there's a lot of information in here. There's a lot to consider. from the number of years to the amounts to the rates. And there's, so we'd ask that, and that's what they're looking for tonight is our feedback and input on what Chris is about to walk us through. So I just encourage everybody to put their thinking caps on and provide that so that they can have what they hope to, what they can take back and tweak and change and modify to bring back to us next in November.
All right, ready to dive in? Okay, let's, next slide, please. I'm on my own computer thinking. All right, so just reiterating that the objective tonight is for collaboration with the board, get ideas and have conversations about the different components of the levy. And then again, we'll come back on November 10th with our recommendation, and then we'll go from there. These are kind of the key areas that we want to talk about. Levy statistics, what's been our passage rate over time, and a lot of different, we'll talk about different slides on levy stats. We'll look at levy funded programs and positions. So what's currently in our levy and what's being funded. The duration, what are the options for duration? 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. We'll talk about that. Election date options and the dollar and rate projections, and then the levy calendar. So more time on a couple of these than others, but want to have the information in front of you on all of these topics. Thanks. Okay, so kind of key talking points here. Levies for learning. So remember, as a reminder, bonds are for building, levies are for learning. So levies support students, student support programs, or supports for student programs, et cetera. The 2001 levy was collection for 22 and 23. So as I mentioned, the current levy expires on December 31, 2023. A simple majority is required, as you know, 50% for passage or more. And the 2023 levy will be for collection for whatever the term is, duration that the board ultimately decides, but it can be up to 4 years for a 4-year levy. Selah is typically gone with a 2-year levy, but we're looking at 3- and 4-year levies, and we'll bring more information to you on that. If the levy fails, so if we get less than 50% yes votes, then we will not get, if we had a double levy failure, we will not receive levy equalization. So as you know, we can run a levy twice in any calendar year. If you fail twice, then you lose your levy equalization funding as well, which is about 2.4 million, 2.5 million on average right now. And that's huge. When it's added with the levy dollars, it's about 10 million, or it's about 6.1 million, which is 10% of our budget. So it's a lot of money. You'll see that when we talk about the different options, all 4 options, when we talk about projected rate per thousand, it's always key to talk about, to make sure that when referencing that you're looking at projected rates, because our actual assessed value actually drives the rate per thousand that we collect. The voters pass a dollar amount. They don't pass a rate. So because we don't know what the rate's going to be. The assessed value spikes up, the rate's going to go down. If the assessed value goes down, the rate's going to go up. So when we go out to the taxpayers and ask for a yes vote, we include dollar amounts that they approve. And that's all we can collect, that dollar amount per year, per calendar year. Elections are on a calendar year. So when we talk about the options tonight, those options, all 4 of them, when you combine the levy rate and the bond rate together in a total, the projected rate is lower than what we're collecting now on all 4 options. So the benefit of that is when we go out to the community and we give them information about what the rates or projected rates look like, we can say, we can say that the total rate, the total projected rate to be collected is estimated to be less than what we're collecting at right now in 2022 and projected in 2023. We'd even look at, it's dropping from 2022 to the preliminary in 2023 in a total rate. You'll see it on one of the slides. I've updated since I met. And then, so it's important that we talk about that. Now, are taxpayers paying more? In some cases, yes. I mean, assessed values are going up on all their home, on everybody's home, really. That drives a higher rate, but I mean, a higher amount of tax that we pay, but the projected rate and the dollar amount that we're collecting is what's approved by the voters, and we can't collect anymore. If our projected rate, like in 2021, if our actual rate comes in higher than our projected rate because the assessed value went down, then you as a school board have the opportunity to certify for less to bring that down to the projected rate that we told the community that we were going to collect at, like we did in
This is what
2020.
we did, yeah.
What we did. And so that's always the board's option to come back, and we are required by law to bring the certification to you every November to say, board, we're recommending you certify the amount we collect on our bonds and the levy. So that's how that works. Jump in when you want to add any.
Well, just, from a taxpayer standpoint and a property owner, we get wrapped around the rate concept and idea, but your point of the dollar amount, which is really key, is it's hard to communicate that because people look at it differently, and it's not that they wouldn't understand it. It's just the way it is, a perception that's out there, and so it's important for our communications to make sure that they understand that the rate is projected, but that can change, and it's a dollar amount that you're approving.
Exactly. A lot of the misunderstanding out there is they think, well, assessed values are going up like here. The assessed value is predicted to go another 12% on the preliminary assessed value that we have, another 12% up. So the community typically will think, and they don't live in this world of running these numbers, so they don't know. A lot of my friends even have asked the question. So as the assessed value goes up, does that mean you guys get to collect more? No, we don't. We don't get to collect more. So we still collect the same dollar amount that the community authorizes in the.
That's a key, that's
In the
really a
levy.
key distinction.
Yeah. Okay, so when we talk, this is one of the statistics slides. So you can see here, this is our election passage history, rate history for Selah. And you can see here that an EP&O is what is the levy. It's the technical.
There you go,
acronym.
messing us up again.
I know. Operations.
Central programs and operations.
So that's levy. So requires a simple majority to pass. So you can see here in all of these, in most years, I mean, we're up over 60%. There's a couple years there in 2019, we're at 59%, but that's still passage. We dropped down in 2021. Remember, in February, we failed the levy. It was 47%. Worst time to run a levy in the middle of the pandemic. And then we came back in April and passed the levy just under 55%. This gives you the history for Selah.
Still, historically, 55% is lower than our average over the last 10 to 15 years.
Yes.
The previous times that the levy failed, as you can see back there in 11 and so forth, that's when the bar was set at you must receive 60% and have a supermajority and not a simple majority. The legislature changed the laws and enacted to be a simple majority. So that's where you see those ones that failed because it didn't meet the 60% supermajority.
Okay. Let's look at the next slide here. So the levy history, this shows collection amounts. And again, going back to, we asked the public to approve an amount, not a rate. We estimate a projected rate, but we asked them to approve an amount. You can see here in 2019 where the big gray goes halfway down on the bar. That's when the legislature said you have to cap your levies at $1.50 per thousand. So we took a big hit in the amount of money that we could collect from the voters because the maximum was $1.50. So we dropped down to 2.7 million in 2019, and immediately the legislature, the next session, approved a lid of $2.50. So a lot of districts have inched their levies up based on need over time since that decision was made.
Well, in 2019, that coincides with the basic ed decision for state to provide
Exactly.
more money.
Yep.
And so the
McCleary.
state property tax was that.
Yes, that's correct. So you can see there that the dollar amounts there from in 2020 and then 2021, you'll see that we certified for, you made the decision to certify for less in 2021 to actually collected $1.50 per thousand. 2022, you can see there 3.5 million or just under 3.6 million, and then our projected 3.9 million for 2023, or what's going to be certified. I'll bring the resolution for that at the November. Okay. So let's go. Any questions on this?
The shift, that 135,000 in 2021, that represents that rollback.
Yeah.
Was that a nick, was it 5 cents?
5 cents.
And so it added up to 135,000.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, that's not anything to shake your head at. I mean, that's money. That's significant.
Mhm.
But we were able to absorb that by
Making adjustments and what
adjusting the
we're
budget and
funding, yep.
and so forth. So it's not like didn't go without a little bit of angst and
Exactly.
pain, but we were able to manage that and not have to dip into reserves or.
Not in that case. Okay, so this slide really looks at tax rates, total tax rate. So when I referenced earlier, we're looking at our bond rate that we're currently collecting in the history of that and our levy. And you can see the levies in the green on the bottom, so it's the larger number. The bond is in the tan color on top of the green bar. So you can see here that if you just look at 2018 and forward, 2019 is when we dropped to $1.50 on the levy. So that is the main reason of that drop there. We also had passed a bond in 2018. So now you're looking, when you look at 2019, we were collected at $3.92 in total. 2020 went down to $3.72. And then 2021's 362. And as you can see, there's just a decline in the rate collected in total by the district. So we'll talk more about how 2022 compares to the options that we're going to reference tonight.
Is that because is this reflective of the refinancing of the bonds? That part of it?
That is part of it now. 2022, we just refinanced the bond. So you'll see the difference in the 2022 actual rate collected versus the projected 2023. And that amount, the bond refinancing is reflected in that.
It'll continue to drop.
Yes.
Nice. Okay.
Okay, this is a really good slide for reference. When we do a lot of different things, we compare with our valley districts. I mean, I know our work as in a fiscal world, we're always comparing to our neighbors and having discussions about what's working for them and how do they fund this and that. But as far as the levy goes and bond rates, this slide is great. This is for levies. And it actually, well, it's not just for levies. It shows bonds and capital projects levies, which obviously we don't have. But it shows us, you can see there in the highlighted bar, collecting at $3.40 basically for 2022. We're less than half of the way down. You know, the top district there is Zillah collecting at $4.95, and we're down to $3.40, which is less than halfway down all the districts. So we're not even at the midpoint in comparison to other districts in the valley. So we feel like even now we're at a really good place with being comparable with our neighbors.
Can't currently hear who's speaking.
Sorry, Joe, again, if you just look at the districts that are to the left of us that have a lower rate, they do have a little bit in common. They're either small districts. There's 2 districts that reside within the boundaries of the Yakima Nation. And then you have Sunnyside down there who receives significant amount of levy equalization dollars. And so they don't have to ask their patrons to support a large levy. They simply have to get the levy passed in order to get the large amounts of levy equalization. So if you take us and where we sit, and then compare us more so to the right of more alike districts, not only with student demographics, but size and tax base, you can see that we've been pretty fiscally sound and responsible with being able to operate the programs, but also making it make our decisions with consideration with regards to the patrons and their taxes.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. That was one thing that I noticed too on that list is like where we are as far as kind of socioeconomically. I think we're really well fiscally positioned, like you said, and I think that's kudos to Chris and her team, obviously, on that.
Thanks, Joe.
Well, it appears to me too, that if you take the bond, the gray out of there and remove the bond and you just look at the blue where we are compared to our neighbors, you know, we're at or below the majority of the others. So even if you just look at the levy money, you know, Selah's operating in a very attractive and I think conservative and fiscally responsible manner here.
I might be suggest that would be a good graphic to have, is just levy rates in addition to total rates.
Yep, that's a good idea. All right. And just a reminder, right now we're collecting at $1.50, which is the lowest rate you can maintain without losing levy equalization funding. So we're at the base right now.
Real quickly,
Okay.
just to clarify, sorry, Chris.
No problem.
I'm gonna turn the video off so you guys don't have to look at my unshaven face and nostrils and stuff because I got to peer in and see these graphs. So I'm with you, even though the video's not on. Just
Okay.
for clarity.
We can't see anyway because we have the presentation up.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you wouldn't want to see this right now.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Okay, so when we talk about levy support, there's 3 main buckets that all of our levy funded items fall under. One, student learning first and foremost, technology and athletics and activities. So that's just a highlight as we move forward with this presentation. So this next slide lists those things that are currently funded or that are being talked about at this time to be funded next year. So you can see here our campus safety and security. We have staffing in there with campus monitors. We have security equipment and our services with the ESD for safety. Part of Joe's position is funded here as our district school safety director, so on and so forth. So then we also have nursing. We have technology, employee training, so professional development, English language support for our EL program, drug and alcohol education support, and instructional materials, so textbooks and other materials for students, special education support. We get federal and state funding for special education support, so those serving students on IEPs, but we're not fully funded, like many districts. Most districts are run in the red in their special education programs. So we fund right now on average about $500,000 a year out of the levy for our special education program. Fine arts, athletics, student activities, clubs and organizations, band instrument replacement and the repairs, that is not currently being funded by the levy, but we're putting that into our proposal moving forward. Highly capable learning, staffing. So additional staffing that we need to offer different classes and programs. One main one is dual language support. That we're not funded for by the state is funded out of this. So currently we fund 7 certificated staff out of the levy that are above and beyond our basic education allocation. So we've for years have had a few positions funded by the levy. Classified, we also fund currently 63 hours a day spread across the district out of the levy to support coverage of duties, student-led groups, student support and small groups and other mainly paraeducator support in classrooms for students. We just don't get enough staff through the basic ed allocation and our categoricals to operate. So we do fund some of that through the levy. And then facilities maintenance and grounds. As you know, we, as a board, you've done a great job over the years in transferring an amount of money from the general fund to capital projects fund to take care of these ongoing needs that we have in our facilities. Fortunately, now as we replace facilities, we have less annual needs to maintain our facilities, but we have needed and continue to need funding outside of what we have in bonds, because you can't use your bond funding for just anything. And our bond projects are now, and after the end of this year, will be coming to an end for a while. We need to have that funding available, HVAC systems, painting, a lot of different needs in the district. So, and sometimes like equipment for maintenance comes out of the levy. Those are kind of the key things right now.
So, Chris, the slide before you sort of opened it with saying there's, 4 areas, main buckets or areas that the levy supports, student learning, technology, athletics, and activities. And then this bulleted list is all of those all in one, of just an idea, maybe to categorize those and take those same categories if you think those are valid titles of columns or whatever, and plug the right bullets underneath the title so that it's a visual that people.
Yeah, definitely. And all of our communications that we've put out in the past categorize those. I probably should have done that on this slide, but yeah, that's important for the community to see what percentage of your levy funded items fall under student learning, what percentage falls under technology. And so it's a good point, Jeff. Appreciate it.
I think it's interesting that of the topics we've discussed here at the meeting, which include school security, DECA, student newspaper, athletics, hi Andy, are all covered by levy dollars.
Yes.
That we've been highlighting and discussing so far.
Yeah, good point, Dan. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So those we talked about what does the levy fund? And as you can see, as Dan mentioned, a lot of important key components that are funded through the levy that we wouldn't normally have funding to do. And so to best meet our students' needs, we have this funding available to fund those different areas. So the next part of the conversation is really around duration. So the options are 1, 2, and 3, and 4 years. That you can't pass a levy more than 4 years, and you can go down to 1 year. I don't know any district that just does a 1-year levy. There's a lot of downfalls to that. Voter fatigue being the biggest issue with a 1-year levy. But so that's not going to spend a lot of time on the 1-year levy. 2 years has been our practice here in Selah for a lot of years. We've landed on a 2-year levy. We have, it provides us the best timely response for legislative impacts. But as time's gone on, we realize we've had a lot of conversation, especially with Kevin coming in and having a lot of experience with 4-year levies. We feel confident that if we land on a 4-year levy, that we would have great budgeting power and knowledge to be able to do that moving forward. And then less voter fatigue as you move up the line to 4 years. So even 3-year is better for voter fatigue. You won't have as much voter fatigue with 3 versus 2, but 4 being the best in that area. Also, one of the key components here is that if we go right now, the only only measures on the ballot this time around for levies. Highland's the only other district running in 2023, and East Valley's running a capital projects levy. So that'll be it on the ballot, probably if we land on the February date for a levy date. Those will be the only ones on there. If we go to a 3 or 4 year levy, we're gonna be back on cycle with other districts. Of course, they get to decide the same thing every time they run. They may go to a different number, but many of our valley districts go with 4 year levies anymore. So that would put us back on cycle if you look at a 3 or 4 year levy.
So historically, the reason that Selah has traditionally had a 2-year levy was because of the uncertainty of legislative decisions.
Correct.
And so now the landscape has changed to the point where, probably not totally predictable, but there's ways to forecast better now in a 3 or 4 year window rather than.
Yes. Yes, and based on our history on things that are funded under the levy umbrella. I mean, we know some of these things that are funded there, we can't imagine not having funding for those things. They're things that have been in place for years for Selah, and they're effective for our students and their learning. So we can better predict moving forward now. We know that history and what our needs are. And I think we believe that we would, both Stephanie and I have talked at length about this with Kevin, and we feel a 3 or 4 year levy, we could definitely predict sufficiently with either one of those.
Other questions? or
Yeah.
comments on this?
So a 2-year levy, it says it's beneficial for a timely response to legislation. How does a 3-year levy or a 4-year levy significantly impact that? So will we have, I'm not sure how to phrase that. Do you know what I'm?
Yes, that's a really good question, because in the past, over past years, I would say I was a little uncomfortable with the 3 or 4 year levy, because we just weren't sure with what was happening at the legislative level where we were going to land every year. It's become a little bit more predictable. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know if we're going to get a zinger in one of these sessions that's going to go, whoa, now we got to figure out how to fund that. I think I know this is my 23rd year doing this, and I know I feel much more confident going with a longer term levy now based on just the history at the legislative level and the things that they're looking at. Kevin, do you have anything you want to add to that, or Stephanie?
So it has been, I think that traditionally most school districts ran a 2-year levy. I think across our state, 2-year levies were the norm. And it then started to bubble up from some districts who thought that it may be in the best interest of their districts to not have to continue to go back to the voters and ask for support. And so they chose to run levies at either a 3 or a 4 year term, knowing that the possibility of having some changes from the state legislature every year may be a concern, but they thought that when they weighed out the benefit of a 4 year or a 3 year for the patrons compared to any of the possibilities that would come through the legislature, they felt that there was more benefit on that side. Tradition is one thing, and I came in my previous 2 experiences, 2-year levies. That is what it was. But those were districts that didn't tend to have a lot of other initiatives on the ballots that were impactful to the community or schools. Very seldom would there be a city vote that needed levy funds from the community in both Zillah and Sunnyside. And so they tended to be the only thing on the ballot every 2 years. And as more municipalities and more needs for other funding came about, other people came to the table and were running levies as well on years. And so voters became confused and fatigued at the same time. And then elections were, I think in general in our society, were maybe looked upon maybe more positive than they have in the last few years. and the results would be accepted and would be in the most part positive. That has not been the case over the last few years. And so my philosophy is that if we were to go a 3 or a 4, there would be greater benefit just knowing that we wouldn't have to go back to our voters and ask for their support in 2 short years. Because it's very quick turnaround. 2 years, very, very quick. I will also share that, 4 years is a long time, but it does give you some flexibility for other potential needs that you may have where you could come back in a 2-year and go back to the voters if you felt that there was really a big need. Now, it couldn't be at a levy, but it could be at a capital levy. It could be at a tech levy. It could be a school safety levy. It could be a levy with a specific need, but it couldn't be another large, levy that involves everything.
And so if you have a 3 or a 4-year levy, then because it's a dollar amount that we're forecasting the need for, then from year 1 to year 2 and 3 and 4, there's an assumed stair step amount. Then it's not the same dollar amount throughout. It's stair step based on expected increases.
Based on projected assessed value increases at whatever level you project that at. So that's how that's when you see a dollar amount from 1 year to the next, to the next, to the next on a levy, the way it increases is what you use as your projection for assessed value. Whether it's if it was decrease, you'd see the amounts going down. So this next slide on duration shows you which in each of the 4 scenarios there, what districts we would be back on cycle with. Now, again, they get to make this decision just like you all make this final decision. They may change what they're running to, whether it be a 3 or 4-year levy or 2-year levy. But this, in looking at what everybody is running right now, this is how that looks with us getting back on cycle for the next time around. Okay, so the next key area is levy election dates. We have a strong opinion about.
Sorry, Chris, before you go on. There's an assumed benefit, and maybe you can just verbalize it for me, that if we are running a levy at the same time that other districts are running levies, is there shared costs of running a levy or the costs of the whole voter process countywide?
Yes, definitely. All of the election costs or the county gets split between all the districts running levies at that time. So it is a cost saving measure. It also is I think it's nice when districts are running levies together because they can kind of spin things off one another, kind of talking about key components of the levy and why it's important. I know the Herald always does a really nice article about all the districts running levies and what the benefits are for their districts, and superintendents are normally interviewed for that article and us and such. So I think there are a lot of benefits running with other districts.
It's commonly believed that it's a benefit to have other districts, neighboring districts, also.
Yes.
doing their levy.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So when we talk about levy election date options, I mean, like I started to say that, I don't know, I have a pretty strong opinion about running a levy in February, not only just because February is great, because for budgeting practices, if the levy fails, which we hate to even talk about because we don't want the levy to fail. If it fails, you can run it a second time in that calendar year, which would mean you could turn around and run it in April, and you would still have your results way before your budget is required to be submitted to OSPI. And you'd be able to run with budget analysis on a 1-year scenario. If you, let's say you ran the levy in April and it failed, and then you had to run it August 1st, you'd really have to look at 2 scenarios for your budget, because if you run the risk of having a double levy failure, your budget's going to look a lot different without the levy and levy equalization funds in it. So For budgeting practices, obviously, we recommend February. Also, we'll get to a statistical slide here, I think that follows this one, that shows yeah, it is, this next slide, if we look at that, the next slide shows that February does have the highest rate of success in passage than the other April, August, and November options. You can see there that over 96% for levies and capital levies, 92% and 49 being the highest. So all three of the different types of levies, the regular maintenance and operations levy, capital levies, and school bonds all have the highest rate of success in a February election. And also Selah has obviously a history of running levies in February as a first run.
Well, I think the other thing we think about in terms of big picture projects here is, the levy is a huge event. But we also have a 1-year contract with SCA, which will be renewed and renegotiated, bargained a year from now. So that would happen in the summer, most likely.
Probably in the spring.
And, could go into the summer a little bit too. So in my book, I'm not sure you'd want to have that bargaining going on at the same time you're trying to pass there's too much uncertainty there and just too much room for lots of gray.
It's better to be at a different time on that. Okay, and this slide is in the packet or in the presentation just as an informational slide for you, just to show you what the final tally was on the last time around when we ran a levy in 2021, and then the prior levy before that, 2019 and 2016. So you can see there the numbers, yes and no votes and percentages. So that gives you that information. Okay, this is an important slide here. These are the options that we are looking at presenting to you. And if you could tell us, we don't like option A, B, C, or D, we'd like to have you look at a projected rate of X. We can always do that as well, but we wanted to have some numbers in front of you tonight to give you an idea of what these look like. So what does this all mean? So if you look at on the left, the second column from the left where it says actual 2022 rates. So this gives you the amount that's being collected this year in 2022 and the actual rates that are driven by the assessed value change. So you can see that we're currently collecting $1.50 per thousand we are for the levy and $1.90 per thousand for the bond, which is a total of $3.40. If you look to the next column to the right for 2023, we have a preliminary assessed value from the county, both Kittitas and Yakima counties. And this is preliminary being because we don't have a final assessed value yet. This projection is looking at collecting at $1.50 again for the levy, and then $1.72 for the bond at $3.22. So we're automatically seeing a decline in the rates that we're looking at collecting moving forward. And then now looking at options A, B, C, and D as just different scenarios to look at as a board and what that means in total projected tax for our taxpayers, the rate. So you can see the amounts there at the top and I outlined this in a 4-year scenario, just so you can see numbers across over 4 years. And so in option A maintains a projected rate of $1.50 per thousand for the levy, and it drops the bond rate down to $1.40 per thousand for a total tax of $2.90, which is actually 32 cents lower than 2023 and 50 cents lower than 2022. Next option is $1.60. So same thing that I mentioned. So $1.60 on the levy per thousand as a projected rate, and $1.40 for the bond for $3 per thousand. And that's 22 cents lower than 2023 and 40 cents lower than 2022 on projected rates. Option C, these amounts listed there, you can see how they stagger up like the other two options. And this is at $1.65 per thousand for the levy. And again, $1.40 for the bond and $3.05. So again, 17 cents projected lower than 2023 and 35 cents lower than 2022. And the last option is at projected $1.70 per thousand for the levy. And again, $1.40 for the bond. So being $3.10. So even this option is lower than what we're collecting at in 2022 and projected to collect at in 2023. So again, this is really a great selling point for us as a district with our bond refinance and the money we've already saved our taxpayers at over $4.7 million over across our tax base, which is wonderful, but also looking at even a lower rate moving forward in total as a district. So it's really a great place to be, in my opinion. It's still we have to make sure we're very clear on our message to the community and giving them a lot of information. And if the rate ends up that you make a decision to go higher than $1.50 on a projected rate, we just need to be very clear on why do we need the additional funds and what will we spend the additional funds on?
That's kind of what I was thinking. So option A, obviously, is so that we get full match.
Yes,
If we
full levy equalization,
if we go less than $1.50, we lose out on that.
correct.
Then we look down option B, C, and D. And when we're planning this, are we picking an amount that we feel we need and working backwards from there, or what we think we can pass, then build a budget from there? You know, which way, how should we be looking at this? I mean, obviously, option A, we have to go with that minimum. So is B, C, and D, are we upgrading to more band instruments for cleaning or replacing or whatever? You know, how do we kind of, in talking to the voters, how do we kind of describe on which option we're picking?
So the way that we ran the numbers is we took at estimated 12% assessed value growth. And again, that's a number we use to calculate amounts. And then that gives you a projected rate per thousand. But again, the board always can certify for less if the rate ended up higher than what we sold to the community. So
Does the 12% come from the county? Is that their projection too, or is that a Selah school district?
we have used, based on historical increases, like the last 3 years, we've been over 12%. So I think 2 years, 12%, and the year before was slightly less. So we're using that amount, but it's important to use 12% because, or a higher, potentially a higher number than where you think the assessed value is going to land, because you want to make sure not go under $1.50, because then you're losing a pro rata share of your levy equalization. So it's important. And the ESD, our Educational Service District financial folks, and the county would advise you to do that, because you don't want to jeopardize that other funding. So we go at it that way, but also we, as a starting point, have spent a lot of time looking at our numbers at $1.50. We projected that, and then we looked at what our updated estimates for these things that we currently fund in the levy, how does that match up against what a projected $1.50 drives for us? The 4.5 million, 5 million, 5.6 million. We match those up against over the 4 years. And I can tell you right now, the $1.50 is, with all the labor costs and everything that are included in the different levy lines in the budget, the $1.50 is not sufficient to sustain what we already are funding and looking at these other things that potentially need to be
And that
built
kind of
in.
answers the question
Yeah.
that I'm asking.
Yeah.
So A is more there just because that's the minimum we can.
Yep.
So option B, C, D maybe just makes your life a little bit easier, but B and C are probably where we need to be in order to continue how we're doing things right now.
Right. And that's when we come back with a recommendation to you in November. We will show you how our projections match up to what these options, what our recommendation looks like, and it'll match up to what the dollar amounts are here versus what the projected costs are of the things that we would like to fund. So, I mean, you'll be able to see that level of detail, but it's important right now as we calculate what it's going to cost us over the next 4 years for the current areas that we're funding, and then also looking at these other things that are important. And just as a side comment, we have our administrators, we gave them a period of time to give us proposals on things that they see in their buildings and programs and needs of their students, to send those things to us, and we're compiling those to be able to have further conversations at the cabinet level and also the building administrative level to say, okay, let's talk a little bit more about this. And then in the end, decisions have to be made what would be funded and what won't be funded. And it will be based on whatever option is selected. So it's, like I said, the conversations for me are I love that part of it because we get to learn more about how the different areas benefit our students. And that's really the most important part. So
So the preliminary rate, that column labeled preliminary 2023 rates. For 2023, we're going to collect 3.9 million. And so if you just go to option A, just for example, what we're saying is that we would go from 3.9 to 4.5.
correct.
And if we choose B, it would be 4.8 and C would be 4.9. And so what are we saying and what are you seeing that we would, is that the 12%? Is that, there's an increase there, obviously. And I guess the question, behind all of this is, what do we need? I mean, there's a point where, sure, we save taxpayers a bunch of money, which I'm really grateful and happy about. But that doesn't mean we'd go grab it somewhere else. And so the question is, what do we really need as a district to maintain these programs and, listen to the leaders in the district on, what additional resources and support they need and all of that stuff. But, and I think there is a point where we just, we start looking like we're grabbing money to grab money. And I don't know that that's smart.
No, in fact, it was interesting. Kevin made the similar comment to me when we first started talking about.
I know
this.
he's the one that got me to thinking about it.
He,
I'm going to give him credit.
Yeah.
I went, "You're right."
I appreciate that because we don't want to just go out to try to get more. It's really, and that's exactly what Kevin said to us is we don't want to just go out and see how much money we can get. We need to nail down what our needs are and what we need to support the needs for our students.
But the key
period.
is if we don't get to that levy equalization, then we're hurt.
Well, definitely. We
So-
can't go below $1.50.
Right.
We can't. That would be just irresponsible. So this gives you a little bit to chew on. Any more conversation about what, like, put your community hat on too, as far as what your perception is of support in the community, thinking about the total rate being less than what we're collecting at now, but just thinking about what you think we can support with our community.
I think one thing when we get this out, this is a very simple, very easy to follow presentation. So anyone that has questions, of course, they can always call you, but if they review this first, at least it makes sense at this point.
I have a question about the numbers on this page. The total projected rate of actual 2022 was $3.40, and the preliminary 2023 rate was $3.22. But our authorized collection rate is greater in 2023. Where does that money come from?
Wait, I want to make sure I followed your question. So. Authorized. Can you say that again? I missed that. Go ahead.
Between the two. It's just the difference in assessed value of our property in Selah.
So that's one of the kind of relates to a question I had. The property values assessment has increased. We've maybe recently seen that, some people. There are also possibilities that the mortgage rate going up to 7 point, whatever it is now, the highest in 30 years, that property rates could go down, property values could go down. If we're at option A, did I understand it? If property values go down, that we would be in danger of losing levy equalization dollars?
If the assessed value goes up, the projected rates go down. So
What if assessed values go down?
then the rates go up, and then the board has the authorization to certify for less.
Really be the opposite of it. I'm following down though. Does it either scenario put us in jeopardy of losing equalization?
The what?
If we go at 150, does prices go up?
More than 12%.
Yeah, that would jeopardize it if your rates went up higher than that.
answer your question about that. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm of the opinion that, the rates are certainly a consideration and we need to be aware of, the equalization money, but to me, it's what does the district need dollar wise? And then let that drive the rate. And so if in your budget projections, you're saying, to maintain the programs, to continue to add needed support in our district and, across the state and, whatever the trends and needs and requirements might be. Because we all know if something comes out of Olympia, it may not come with money, right? So we have to anticipate that a little bit. To continue the trend line of 3.9 to 4.5. But, no, to maintain things, we need that 4.8 because we want to make sure that we can continue the things that we've built over the years and still be able to provide the education that students and parents expect. So, and to me, it's a dollar amount. So we probably don't need 5.1 million. Option D. But 4.5 seems a little bit shy. And so to me, it seems to me like it's, in my mind, it's coming down to B or C.
What we can do when we come back with our recommendation is we can run what our needs are against these scenarios. So then that way it'll help you make a final decision.
So I will have just one quick question about that. We've seen graphs that take us out, I don't know, 8 or so years or something like that, where we begin to start losing reserve funds, maybe even below the level that we'd like to keep them at. How does that factor into what we ask for from a levy rate?
Well, definitely that it's part of the revenue picture for our levy funds. And it does go into the picture for the 4-year financial forecast. So wherever we land on these, if you land at a higher, like option D is going to put you in a better position on that bottom line for the financial forecast than option A. So it's part of the bigger picture as well. But the other thing that we don't want to do is count on 100% of the levy to make the district right. I mean, we're not going to just try to generate more money because, oh, we got to, pay for whatever. The levy we're trying to compartmentalize to, these are the things that are funded under the levy umbrella that we want and need to continue to fund, or maybe something else like band instruments and such that we need to put into that and see what is that going to cost us and match it up against what these options are. And then that's how we're going to determine what our recommendation is going to be. Really, ultimately, Kevin's decision from a cabinet level, does he feel good about bringing it to the board or not? A lot of conversations going into it behind the scenes, but that's really the bottom line.
Chris, can I ask, where did these 4 numbers come from these options? Because, we mentioned, we don't want a money grab, but 250 per 1,000 would be a money grab. So 170 doesn't seem, but when we lay it out like this, it's like, well, we don't want to go to option D, but if we need option D, we need to consider option D.
Mhm.
If you spread that out over a few more columns, and I don't know, so that's part of
Yeah.
what I'm trying to
They-
ask. What was the decision or the thought process behind these 4 numbers?
So the numbers came from using a projection off assessed value, taking the total assessed value for our properties that fall within our district from Kittitas and Yakima counties, looking at that projected assessed value using a 12% inflator factor, and then running with, if it's $1.50, what does that drive? Okay, 4,502,000, and each year thereafter, based on the projection of the increase in assessed value. And same with option B, C, and D. It's looking at what does that assessed value look like in all 4 options and running it at that projected rate of $1.60, $1.65, and $1.70. When we originally met with Jeff and Jamie, we looked at $1.55 and not $1.65 as one of the options. And it was just such a minimal amount of money difference that we decided, I decided I would put in a $1.65 option instead of the $1.55 option, just so we could see the difference in those 4. But again, let's say we bring an option to you that's the dollar amounts needed are between options C and D or B and C, then we can run different scenarios at $1.63 projected or $1.64, $1.66. I mean, these are just, these four options were just based on those projected numbers to spread it out a little bit, to show a 20-cent gap to see what those dollars would project.
Right, so I understand that, but I guess what I'm really asking is option D, you don't feel that for budgeting purposes that we would need to go higher than that?
Yeah, why not have a row that says what it would be at the current rate, which would be $2 if I'm looking at it right.
Yeah, if
It would be 30 cents lower than $1.70. So if it was the same amount that we're collecting now, would be a $2 levy.
a $2 levy. Right now, with the updated projections on what it will cost to fund what's in the levy, and then looking at some of the new items, we're almost through those calculations. I don't think we would need something higher than $1.70. And the other part of it is it's important to us for us to show that the total projected rate to be collected is less than what we're collecting now. I mean, I don't know if you've seen First Street with all the signs, no new taxes. We want to go out to the community with no new taxes. It's a renewal. So some people, well, it is new taxes. Well, it's a renewal of what you're already paying. In this case, it's going to be less than what you're paying in total for local bonds and levy taxes.
Thank you for that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Anything?
Either of these options, most importantly above all the put out in front of the paper, want to give it the best. Each of these options did feel like all of them had good benefits associated with them, with the amount increase. Some was not significant. If you could tie additional those, if you were to go up to 250, you would have to identify some pretty big cost items that you were going to install. We also felt that each of those options, whether it's A or D, could be ones that we would be able to promote. Really support, community.
I do think option A is truly a replacement bond or levy. I mean, replacement purely, I mean, it's $1.50 plus what the district has done with the bond refunding or refinancing. Here's where we're at. I think if we do go above to B, we have to be a little bit careful about it being a renewing a current levy. We are changing it at that point. We're 11-12% higher, you know, at the rate that we're collecting. So I do think A, if we can make that work, is exactly a replacement renewing, however we want to advertise it.
Yep, that's a really good point. We need to think about how we word that in our communications.
If we were to choose option D, do we feel like there would be a lot of pushback from the community? Because like, we don't want to make a cash grab, right? But what if we need that? Like, if we want to get the most amount of money possible without looking bad, but does option D, does that really make us look bad in a sense, you know?
Community would have to have trust in the district that it would be spent responsibly, and that if we did have extra money, it would be used for extra programs and that for the students. So it is that's kind of what the discussion is. It's where is our support at? You know, would people want to see, you know, the $1.70 or the $1.50, and what makes it easier, more likely to pass, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to be very clear in our communications about what the levy is going to fund. And if it's at $1.50 or $1.70, what is it going to fund? Have specific dollar amounts about that. I think it's a different conversation when you're talking about a projected tax rate that's more than what we're collecting at now versus less. Because when you're going out and saying that we want to collect, say, a total tax rate of 20 cents projected more per thousand than what we're collecting at, that's going out with new taxes to the community, and it has the tendency there tends to be more pushback on that. With this, I think with total rates, I'm not going to say we won't have any pushback because, you know, in every community, you're going to have people that support your levies and bonds and peoples that don't. And our job is to get out the factual information and the reasons why we need the funding. And if it's an additional funding, why we need that funding and how it's going to be spent so that we can continue to have, I guess, be supported by, you know, I feel like we have a good level of support in our community because we've been very transparent about our finances. And we've also been willing to meet with people and walk through things and just have been honest. There's no secrets. And so it really does shine through, but I'm not going to sit here and say there won't be people that will be against the levy. That's going to happen no matter where you are.
And I think it's also important for us to consider if, you know, if we are thinking about a multi-year or beyond 2 years, you know, think about that as well, because we want it to pass, obviously, but in the unfortunate event that it didn't, and we went 3 or 4 years, you know, that's a long time to work with that. So, you know, that there's sort of a balance in there of, you know, how many years and then which option do we go with? And so I think it comes back to, I think many of us are asking about the same question in different ways.
Well, you could run the levy again the next year.
Yes.
So even if you ran it for 3 or 4 years and it didn't pass, you could come back the next year.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, it doesn't
You
mean.
can run it every year, 2 times a year. Kevin, were you going to?
Another thing just about voters in our community. You know, 54.8% got the job done because it's a 50% bar. But like anything with percentages, that's not all that great. When we have of the voters who voted last time when it was approved, 2,771 voted yes, 2,286 voted no. That is not a large group of difference between no voters and yes voters. So I think we want to be really clear on the impact that it may have for those voters. What are they going to be because they're going to be the ones that are going to actually decide this. And I think we have to be very strategic and systematic with regards to considering what is it that they can agree to and support.
I think we need to be cognizant of the 2021 failing, but that's also a time where there was no band. You know, the sports seasons were 5 games. You know, kids were barely coming in and out of the classroom. So that hopefully is an anomaly, you know, based on prior ones. I still think we do have community support. I do think we need to be respectful of the fact that we failed a levy in 2021. But, you know, prior to that, if you look at the 59% and the 63%, those numbers are a lot better. And, you know, passing it at 55% again with very little, when we advertise a levy, we tell what the levy supports. Not much of that stuff was happening in 2021. You know, kids were still in masks in the, you know, 90% of their day at home or whatever the case was. So I don't want to be too Eeyore-ish and pessimistic, you know, with that we've lost a lot of support. I think that was just a weird time.
Well, I don't think we did, because when we came back in April, I clearly remember that the message was an appeal to our supporters out there, you know, please turn out and vote, get the vote out. And you and Amy, you know, drove that as chair of the levy. So if you just look at the numbers, we went from 2,100 to 2,700 in a 2-month period. And, you know, looks like there were even a few that voted no the first time that might have changed their mind. So, you know, it was, but it's definitely something we need to consider and look at as that was our most recent, you know, community information.
I know you'll consider this, but the police law and order bond that you referenced a minute ago will probably factor into what we decide to run as a rate, as will some of the other local school districts that are running things. I know East Valley passed their levy on their first shot last February and we didn't, but sometimes local races like that can give us a little bit of a gauge on where the community is.
Definitely. Good point. All right, so if we want to move the next slide, we've talked about assessed value. So if you want to just go to the levy calendar, Jennifer, that'd be great. So just to reiterate, tonight, having this conversation with the board, we really appreciate the input that you've provided us. November 10th, as I mentioned, we'll come back with a recommendation to the board and then get your final thumbs up or modifications that you'd like to see. And then we will bring a levy resolution before you on December 8th for approval. And of course, I put here February 14th for the election deadline, but you always have the option to pick a different month. Sorry, Jeff.
I think it's important, especially for the student reps, to understand that there's only certain times that you legally can run elections. So there's election dates that you can only do that. So that does some things here with our timeline. And the resolution, the final approval of the board, in order for that levy to be on the 14th ballot, it has to go to the county by the 16th of December. So that is why you see, even though this election's not until the 14th of February, there's a lot of work that's got to be done, because it's all got to be done, signed, sealed, delivered, with the attorneys involved, the board's resolution and all that. It has to be in the hands of Yakima County and Kittitas County by the 16th of December. So we've got work to do in a very short amount of time.
All right. Other questions before we move on? Well, other questions before we wrap this up, and then you have your report. Sorry.
Is Joe still with us? Joe, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Any comments, thoughts, anything you want to add?
No, following along, I appreciate all the information. I would echo the thoughts of several of you that we need to consider that the most recent election was not very long ago, with 2-year levies, and as a taxpayer in Selah, as all of us are, I guess, it is something that we should be. I remember the dialogue that people were engaging in during that time, and obviously it was a more unsettled time during COVID, and hopefully being fiscally conservative on our end and bringing realistic options to the voters will set us up for success. So I appreciate all the effort on the part of the administration team putting it all together.
Good. Thank you, Joe. Well said. Any other comments before we move on? All right, I'll just thank Chris and Kevin and Stephanie and others who have provided input and the work that's gone into preparing this for us tonight. We appreciate that. Hope you've received the feedback you were looking for.
Yes, thank you.
And we look forward to November 10th and the recommendation that you will bring back to us. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, meaty discussion, but a valuable one. And lots to consider there. So now we're going to move into, I've lost my spot on the agenda. Where
Well,
are
how
we?
about we transition back over to our student reps, since Indy has an opportunity now to share with her report, and then I'll follow after her. Does that work for you, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, it does. You snuck in the back door.
I did,
I
yeah.
did not even see you. I mean, I heard you. I knew you were there now, but welcome. We're glad
I
you're
thank
here.
you. Yeah.
So Natalie provided us a little update on what was going on with her and from her perspective, and we would love to hear from you.
Great. So I'm honestly, it's pretty similar to what Natalie said, but I'm currently working with Joe to get a date and time settled to visit SAS. That's the school I've chosen to look after this year. I'm also looking forward to working on a project with Natalie, hopefully about the high cap program, kind of researching and getting to know it a little bit better. And we attended the community forum at John Campbell last week. Is that last week? Last week. And I thought that hearing from parents and other community members was it brought a great perspective that I haven't really gotten to see before. I've been in the high cap program since sixth grade, I think, but it's different when you're looking at it from a lens like this. And so that was interesting to be a part of. And I've also I'm kind of looking around at doing my own personal project on student culture and kind of how we can work as a district with maybe leadership organizations through the state to kind of further explore our student culture and to get kids more involved, I guess. So that's something I've seen at the high school quite a bit. And I think I talked about that in my interview too. And so I'm pretty passionate in that area. So thank you.
District culture certainly is an important thing for us in this room and across the district. And so having that as a topic at the student level certainly would dovetail nicely into the overall. The All right, I appreciate that, and we're happy that you're here.
Yeah, thank you guys.
I referenced earlier the wonderful article in the Selah Journal, and you are featured in here. Great picture. And did you guys see your pictures up on the wall in the boardroom?
Natalie just pointed them out to me. I was pretty excited about that. I haven't seen the article though. Is that the one that's on the district website? I think I've seen
This
the
one was in the Selah Journal, the local newspaper.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I would be glad to leave this one with you.
Thank you.
There you go. All right, good audible. Thank you for the shift on that.
No problem. Trying to help you out.
Hey, I need all help I can get sometimes. All right, now we'll turn it over to you, sir.
All right, very good. Just some quick information for you. Some highlights that I think are important for you as a board to know. We've reestablished or are attempting to reestablish our network and commitment to work with our community partners. We have established a date of November 8th at 9 a.m. to return our faith-based partners together. We've invited the faith-based leaders across our community to a meeting. I realized at one time prior to the pandemic, there was communication going on and actually some work that benefited schools and work that benefited those faith-based organizations as well. So we're returning to that work. Again, we will start with just an introductory meeting, get to know the new people. And from what we understand, there are a lot of new people in leadership positions within the churches and organizations within our community. So we're just going to get together. They've all been invited. And November 8th at 9 o'clock right here in this room. So you're all invited here.
How many organizations are expected?
We sent out, I believe, 25 different invitations. The second thing is just for your calendars, you probably already know, but that November board meeting does come rather quickly. It comes on the 10th of November, 2 weeks, I believe. And so right back at 2 weeks, we're going to be back here together again. Also, for those of you attending the WASDA conference, the 17th through the 19th is the WASDA conference in November. Important dates within the school calendar with regards to November. We do celebrate and recognize Veterans Day on the 11th. No school on that day. Teacher in-service day on the 16th, which is a Wednesday. And then we do have that break for the Thanksgiving holiday on the 24th and 25th. So we do start into the holidays, and that doesn't have an impact on our calendar for the operation of schools, days off, holidays, and so forth. We did reach out to our community over the last few weeks because we had some open dates within the community collaboration. Remember, there was 2 open dates, and we thought it would be important to get some input from our community and parents about what they saw as being areas that they would like to learn more about or felt we as a district needed to communicate more about. And so we have got input back. The first one on November 16th, we are going to report again on the dual language program. So we've had parents express interest about the dual language program, whether their children are in the program and what they can expect as they move forward in the years, or those from outside the district that just want to know about the program. So we are going to give another update on that. And then the other one that we heard input from, we will schedule in the March community collaboration. That is March 22nd. And that revolves around social emotional learning and specifically one of the curriculums that we use called Character Strong. So we'll have information for parents and community on that one as well. So that does fill our calendar up, other than we do have room, I believe, in June for another community collaboration. Not a normal time to do it, but obviously if there's a need, we will schedule something at that time.
Well, I'd just like to comment the first two that you've sponsored and hosted. I have not had the opportunity to attend either, but I know from talking to you and others that they've been, especially the high cap meeting was well attended. Just like to thank you for the communication and the organization and for reaching out and bringing community in and giving them that opportunity. It's been well received from what I can see. And I think the community benefits from that as well as the district. And so thank you for teeing that up and making it work.
That's very much. Thank you. All right, I'm going to jump right into the next part of the report. And this is a holdover from a work or a study session topic that we had. And it's really just to give you an opportunity to look at last spring's assessment results from the Smarter Balanced assessment and the comprehensive assessment of science for the state of Washington. And so I've given you a handout. This is also what's attached onto board docs, but I want to take you through so you know what you're looking at here and give you a little bit of information about it. This is these are the results of the spring 2022 assessment. And the results are based on two assessments that our students took. The Smarter Balanced Assessment, also known as the SBA, and then for science, the Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science, known as the WCAS. These two assessments encompassed grade level in English and Language Arts, known as ELA, grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10. In mathematics, also those same. And then in science, they were assessed in grades 4, 8, and 11. And I can give you this information if you want. This is kind of just setting the stage for the results that you're going to see. The data that you see is based on a percentage of students that are proficient, that have met what we call proficiency. Proficiency is meeting what is expected to be grade level standard at that specific grade level at that specific time when they're being assessed. So for example, third graders are being assessed on grade level standards, which are state standards for third grade towards the end of their third grade year, obviously in the spring. And the proficiency means that if they've met proficiency, they have met the grade level standards. Above proficiency, there's two levels. I mean, you are proficient. And then as your scores go higher above that cut score, that will determine the degree of proficiency or mastery that you have on those. By the same token, if you don't meet proficiency, that is below that line in the sand per se, or that benchmark number about the percentage of our students within that grade level who didn't meet proficiency. Now they could be 1 point away from proficiency or one question that was answered incorrectly, or they could be significantly below proficiency and in turn below grade level.
And proficiency is defined by whom?
It is defined by the state of Washington and Smarter Balance. Yeah. So you're looking at, again, percentage of students who were proficient. All right, Natalie.
Just out of curiosity, were the grade levels at which the students were tested impacted in any way by COVID? Because if I remember correctly, there was at one point where I took a test that I was supposed to have taken like a year ago. Is that true with these?
That is not true of these.
Oh, okay.
But it would be true of the year prior to, where students were not tested in the spring, but were tested in the fall. So
Okay.
last year, certain students took two state assessments, one in the fall and then another one in the spring. The one in the fall was assessment of the previous year. The one in the spring was for the current year.
I see. That makes sense. Thank you.
Some considerations for you to, when you analyze and look through this data, is that this is the first full assessment since the spring of 2019. In the 2018-19 school year, a full assessment, 19 and 20, there was not an assessment. The 2021, in the spring, there was not an assessment, but it was given to students in the fall of the following year. So this is really the best information and best data we have post, or still one was taken still in the pandemic, but again, moving out. And it was a first full assessment between then and 18 and 19. Obviously, there are impacts of the pandemic. I would say there are impacts on learning. There are also impacts on teaching and the mode that teaching was provided. And then there's also impacts on assessing. Students were not assessed, and being assessed, the more you are assessed, the more logical it's going to be. You're going to do better each time you're more comfortable with the assessment. So there was groups of students that didn't experience an assessment. And the last spring's assessment was the first time they took and navigated through the SBA. Those are all important. There's also some impacts, as you will see, you probably already identified, impacts of participation, specifically at the 10th grade. We did not have a lot of students who participated in that assessment last spring for a variety of reasons. Parental decisions to not have their children participate, or students in the 10th grade did not show. According to the high school principal, it was the largest number of students to not participate in the assessment. Now, their not participation counts as a 0, right? So it's like they took the test and still scored at the very lowest level. And so when you look at these scores at 10th grade in ELA and math, they are reflective of a significant number of students that receive 0 because they didn't take the assessment.
That's a key point, because if
Yes.
you've got a bunch of, zeros in the long list of numbers and then do the average.
Yep.
I mean, if you could,
Is there a way to
Feel those
know the number excluding those?
I don't know. Colton believes it's somewhere around 60 to 75 students.
Is there a way to know this- if we
Oh.
exclude those zeros, what our true tested scores would be?
I don't know. I haven't done that work. The other part of this is that I think our results and the region's results, because you're seeing regional school districts as well as the states, also represent now that we know is a nationwide decline from previous years. The recently came out within the last week was the assessment results of the NAEP, which is the National Assessment of Educational Progress, where students take that assessment across our nation. And there was definitely decline between the 18-19 year and then 21-22. So this is my analysis of the data. And so what you have there is you have the state on the top bar. You then have our school district on the next one down, and then you have other school districts within our area. All of this information is gleaned from OSPI. It is right on their report card, and we simply just took and looked at everybody else and put it in there. It's so you can go and find all this information if you choose to. What I will say from my analysis, and if Alicia was here, she would be sharing the same thing. We've had lots of discussion about this, but our data is in general all over the place. All right. A third of those grade levels that were assessed is above the state average. And we look at state average. That's an important comparison too. So a third, 7th grade ELA, 3rd grade math, 5th grade math, 7th grade math, 8th grade science, all fall above the state average. A third are within 5% of the state. And 5% is kind of that give or take. All right. And we look at that, at least I do in my analysis of assessment results, is that could 5% is kind of within that amount that it could be adjusted if need be, depending on students that maybe missed it by one. And those, yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I'm only looking for our district. I only did this analysis for our district. So those 5% would be, a third of them are like third grade ELA, fifth grade ELA, sixth grade ELA, eighth grade ELA, fourth grade science, and 11th grade science are all within 5% of the state scores. So it just may be a number of a few students, and now you would be at the state average.
2/3 of the population that
Yep.
took this test.
Yep. Either scored above or within 5%. Yeah. And then we have the one that are below the 5% of the state. And those are fourth grade ELA, fourth grade math. So the same cohort of students, the same group of students, both are scoring below 5% of the state. And then we have sixth grade math and then our 10th grade in our ELA and math. So I hope that breakdown gives you a little bit of understanding, especially in that last one, the group, the cohort of students in the fourth grade. Something happened there. Something we need to look further at. That's very unusual to see that. I think the 10th grade we can look farther at, and then I think you'll be able to see the impact of those who did not participate.
Those fourth graders, had they taken the SBA before? Or was that their first?
That may be their first time.
That's, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So, and it could be a lot of different things. I don't, the makeup of the student population within the fourth grade cohort. It's where, if they did take an assessment in the past, how did they score on that one in comparison to how they scored? So these numbers in our analysis will make us start looking at some things a little bit in greater detail. And I would imagine if I had the building principals here, they would know a lot more about that fourth grade cohort.
Also, do we know how steep the decline was just statewide and in comparison to other years? Because these numbers are pretty low, and I wonder like if it's generally around this ballpark or if it's a lot.
These are more significant declines than what would be normal. Usually the trend is a gradual upward trend. These are obviously a much steeper downward trend.
Okay, thank you.
It is the general belief, general belief that because of the academic slide from COVID and that, that 2-year gap in there where we were teaching remote and kids were and were not engaged and, all those things. And, we see the academic decline, and I imagine that all schools maybe across the nation are experiencing the same thing.
And talking to my peers, yes, and not only within our state, but across the nation, they see some similar declines. All of us can pick out things that we think are positive. We can pick out some things that don't surprise us, but we can also in general all agree that there was decline. Another part of this that I didn't list on my notes here, but I think it's important, is that in regular years, the culmination of a lot of work that goes on is done within that assessment. And if the assessment and the assessment week and everything that goes along with state testing, is a large priority within the district. It has a large amount of importance to it. The work that the teachers do, all the communication that goes out, there's an importance to that, and students know that and parents know that. During the 21-22 year, although I wasn't here, I do know enough now that I've been here for a while and my knowledge of other school districts, the state assessment was not the priority that it had been in previous years. It was not something that there had been a significant amount of preparation going to meet those testing dates or testing windows that were going to come up. Matter of fact, in the fall, there was still potential that we didn't know much about the assessment. And so there was still all this unknown about it. And I'm not sure in general that we prioritize it. And when I say we, I'm saying about general education in our state and probably nation. That wasn't the most important thing going on in schools. It was moving past mandates, masks, back to a regular traditional curriculum, back to day-to-day learning, out of the hybrid, out of all those other things. And so I think just getting through the year and getting back to normal probably was a priority, and it probably was not. This
Well, I would also
assessment of
add to your
student
list, I
learning.
would imagine that, the structure of a classroom was way different for those students who had not been in a structured environment for a year and a half. And so, you had kids that weren't used to being told to, pay attention, if you will. So that had to be a factor as well.
I do not want to go without saying this, is that our assessment scores are areas that we need to improve in. I mean, this is a new baseline for us. We should see growth when our students take the assessment coming up in the spring. We should see significant growth in comparison to this baseline. This is a pretty low baseline. When you look at those percentages of proficiency and you see, just for example, we only have 42.4% of our third graders meeting third grade level standards. And we know how important third grade is and all the way through. So I don't want to sugarcoat this. These assessment results for last spring, just like most of all the other school districts, were not good. We have work to do in order to improve them. But they weren't a surprise. Or sometimes you have years where it's not, you don't have COVID or any of those other things. You look and go, oh my goodness, what happened? What happened? How did this happen? That's not the case in this one, but I also don't want people to think that we're just not taking these scores lightly. These are important that we start to identify, look individually at the student and how, if they're growing, and then what we're doing internally at the buildings to ensure that these go up and we have a significantly more students meeting proficiency at those specific grade levels.
When is the next assessment?
It'll be coming up after the first of the year. I think it starts the assessment window. Can't remember exactly, but I think it starts in late March and then goes all the way through May, depending.
That'll be an important comparison, year over year comparison, won't it, to see what progress we've made?
You got it. And that's kind of where we're charged with. I mean, everybody now is back to that. It's more, the routines and looking forward to when our students can show what they've learned.
Well, while you characterize it as not a surprise, it's still sort of a eye opener when you face the reality and the numbers don't lie and the data is there and it's real. It definitely becomes a very easy conversation to have with a very difficult solution on how to fix, but not to let anybody off the hook, if you will, but there's a whole lot of noise and a lot of movement and a lot of things that were unsettled for quite a while there. And when you got kids that are from 5 to 18 years old, I mean, you moving their cheese a lot and that impacts them. I mean, so it's understandable in a lot of ways, but I really enjoy hearing your passion and energy and conviction in your voice about, we need to fix this. And I think as a board and as a community that's what we would expect. And so we appreciate your energy and commitment.
Yeah, this is a new baseline. I guess that's for myself and teaching and learning team and the principals. This is our new baseline. So we should see significant growth if we use this as a baseline and then coming up for the new round of assessment results. I think it does give us also the reason to reemphasize the importance of high quality instruction in classrooms, high quality learning expectations for students with regards to academics and teaching to the standards. The students are being assessed on the standards. That's what they're being assessed on. So we need to be preparing them to be assessed on the standard. And then the other part of this is that I am passionate about individual student growth. And this doesn't tell you the individual stories of students, but there are lots of individual stories within this data that could point all kinds of different directions. And that's really the work of the principals and the classroom teachers, is to be able to see the individual student growth going on. Sometimes we don't get to see that because we look at cohorts or grade levels of students, but within that is individual students, and they're either growing at all kinds of different rates or they're not. And that's where it becomes, we need to do our our Viking promise says is that we meet every kid individually at what they need. Questions?
I want to just make a couple of quick mentions. I have read some of the information about the national report card that just came out. One of the things that they found was that there was an especially steep decline among people of color. Latino and Black students saw more declines than others. And I'm sure if we pulled or disaggregated our information, we might find something similar. So that might be an area to target, and especially as we look at things through what students need to be successful. The other thing that they found doing some research into this national report card was that there wasn't a clear correlation between school closure lengths. It was more about how it was done with getting access to online materials and how online courses were taught. And in our local district, the numbers are bad. There is no sugarcoating it. But if I look at this from a 30,000 foot distance, Selah School District from grades 3 through 10 or 11 is doing better than all but 2 other school districts on that list that's being projected or that's in front of us in terms of comparison to the state averages. So I think a lot of credit goes to the teachers in the classrooms, and an awful lot of credit goes to parents during the pandemic who were co-teaching and realizing the value of those classroom teachers so often, but also working really hard to get the students even to the level what we're at, which while not great is still, I think in a lot of ways admirable and shows the effort that those parents and teachers put in and the kids put in too. And the last thing is that while this represents obvious learning loss during the pandemic, if I look at it and want to find some silver lining, there were learning gains that were had that are very difficult to measure, like resiliency and like adaptability and flexibility, stuff that Joe talked about a little earlier, that you can't really test or assess in traditional ways that I think we'll find as students progress through the system. Maybe those things will start to show up over longer term and even over life, results of their life. Hopefully they'll learn those lessons beyond 8th grade math, which is crucial because it's a gateway part to a bunch of other stuff, but so is resilience.
Very good point. Other comments, questions? Thank you, Kevin, for the, a significant dive here. And, we obviously don't know it like you. However, we do see the numbers and we can all see that, there's opportunity here. And so I don't think there's anybody in this room that doesn't have the confidence in the team at the school district to roll up their sleeves and go to work. And I look forward to looking at the year-over-year numbers after next spring's assessment.
And Alicia did want me to share that she is ready to give you the next update of the data dashboard with a lot of this information in there. And so hopefully we can put that on the agenda for the next glimpse of what that's going to look like for November.
Excellent. All right. Joe, you still with us?
Yes, sir.
Right.
I'll just throw 2 cents in there because it was one of probably the best advice I ever got in the Selah School District when I was growing up. And it was from Chuck Brown, who's no longer with us, but I was a sophomore in his math class and he knew I was not working as diligently as I should in academics and was kind of majoring in baseball. And I got a poor score on a test, and he wrote a note to me on the corner of the test, and it just said, "Get mad and try harder. You really should." And I ripped that corner of that test off and kept it with me for a lot of years. And I think that's just, personally, how I feel, just being the competitive type of person that I am and wanting to do what's best for our district and continue to enrich the place that we all live is try harder. So I think we all kind of share that sentiment, and those numbers should make us get mad and try harder. We really should. So anyways, I got to get off this. I think my phone's about to die. And I apologize for having to join remotely on this such an important evening.
All right,
But,
good.
anyways,
Good. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Everybody in the room is getting mad and gonna try harder now.
heck yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for joining remotely. I know that's not easy, and we appreciate your engagement and staying with us the whole time.
Yeah, you bet. Appreciate y'all. I'm going to sign off. I'll see y'all soon.
Okay, take care. All right. All right, we are at the end of our agenda. Are there any board communications by anyone?
I'll just say thank you to those board members who are helping get the student reps into the buildings. I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes this year.
And thank you, Dan, for being sort of the point person for our student reps and getting them in a good position to feel comfortable and be contributing part of our board. So thank you for your work with that. And Jennifer, thank you for my calendar. I appreciate that. I don't know whether anybody else had theirs already, but I didn't, and so I'm glad to have one. And now we have a badge now that we can look official when we walk into the buildings, and we won't need to provide our license with with the front desk. We'll have that. So thank you for that part of it. Appreciate that. You need one? One of these? No. You are a lifetime charter member of our boardroom anytime, Norma. All right. All right, with that, do we need an executive session? None? All right. Good meeting, everyone. Thank you very much. We'll see you in 2 weeks, November 10th, and hope you enjoy your weekend. And next week, meeting is adjourned.